I don't think men are encouraged. I think they're discouraged actively right from day one. Whether that makes them have a harder time than women is very difficult to say. I think those things are best judged on an individual level. But there's a pernicious social viciousness that's emerged over the last 10 years that I think is disheartening to people, and it would be nice if that would dissipate, and perhaps it will. Perhaps people will gain their senses and stop causing unnecessary trouble. I mean, it's not surprising to me to some degree. We have a technical problem. The technical problem fundamentally is that the birth control pill radically altered the relationship between men and women. It turned women into creatures who did not know who they were. And unsurprisingly, because an entire plethora of new options opened up, and it destabilized the relationship between men and women for the same reason. And it's not easy to understand the new dynamic that should or could emerge as a consequence of women having voluntary control over their reproduction. So, to me, it's in large part the male-female issue is the upheaval of something that's the equivalent of a major biological mutation. So, what? We've had 40 years to figure that out. It's like we haven't figured it out. I think that we've also compounded that by doing almost nothing but lying to young women, because that's all we do to young women. You know, we tell them that, well, first of all, that career is the most important thing in life, which there is no evidence whatsoever that that's true. If you look at standard public opinion polls, you find that 75% of people regard their family and their friends as the most important part of their lives.
Men as well.
Men as well, yes. It's the social. Well, Jesus, most careers aren't careers, they're jobs. How many bloody people have a career? And even if you have a career, what makes you think it's worth giving up a family for? What are you going to do when you're 50 and 60 and 70 and you're alone? And believe me, there's going to be plenty of people facing that. And, you know, so it's no solution. And to tell young women that their fundamental orientation in life is going to be a career is a complete lie. It's not only not true conceptually, because that isn't how people are oriented, but it's untrue demographically, because what happens to the vast majority of women, even professional women, is that when they hit their 30s, their early 30s, they cut back radically on their career commitments and start to focus on having a family. And no bloody wonder, because, well, you better get at it. That's the first thing, because 30's pushing it. And second, well, what makes you think that your job is so all-consuming and meaningful? You mostly get paid to do things that you don't want to do, which is why you get paid for them. You know, there's this tiny fraction of people who have hyper-interesting creative careers, and they're a tremendously tiny proportion of the population. And even those people, it isn't obvious to me, have lives that are better served by their extraordinary careers than they would be served by normative family arrangements. And you need people, you need an intimate partner, you need children and grandchildren. These aren't optional. And to tell young women that that's part of the propaganda of the oppressive patriarchy is, you could hardly do them a more cruel disservice. And they will discover that when they're 30. You know, it's why the law firms lose all their women in their 30s. They all go and take part-time jobs or work 9 to 5. They're not interested in the C-suite. Do you know how goddamn hard you have to work to be a C-suite executive? It's 80 hours a week. I know some insane men that work in the C-suite, and the mystery isn't why there are few women in the C-suite. The mystery is why there are any men at all in the C-suite, because all they do is work. And they have a tremendous amount of responsibility. And you think, well, they have many millions of dollars and they have their yachts and their freedom. And, that's trust fund people or people who are benefiting from unearned oil revenue in the Middle East, the parasitical rich, let's say, who aren't productive. But most of the people who occupy themselves in business have thousands of employees that they're responsible for and unbelievably heavy responsibilities. And they pay a huge price for that because all they do is work. Now, some men in particular, and some women, but a fewer proportion of women, some men are wired like that. And wherever you put them, they're going to work 80 hours a week because they're hyper-conscientious, and it's in their nature. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a recipe for a balanced life, even though the rest of us might be reasonably pleased that there are at least some people who are willing to do that. But to think of that as a target for ambition it's just not realistic for the vast majority of people. Who wants that? Why would you want to work 80 hours a week? It's exactly what I know this. I worked with female lawyers for a decade. High-performing female lawyers. And all of them woke up at 29 or 30 once they'd made partner and thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm working constantly.